Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Open Space and Recreation Plan Update Public Forum for the City of Lynn. Before we get started, we would like to introduce Mayor Nicholson for some opening comments.
Buenas noches a todos. Gracias por unirse a nuestro foro público sobre el plan de espacios abiertos y recreación. Antes de empezar, queremos introducir a nuestro alcalde, Jared Nicholson.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the team for organizing this. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to get input from you on one of the many exciting plans that are underway here in our community on a really important resource, which is our park system. Many of you have spent a lot of time in our parks, grown up with our parks. Some of you may be newer to exploring the parks system, whether it's your neighborhood park or from the citywide perspective. It's a critical part of what the city does to give us opportunities to be healthy, to be safe, to have fun, to spend time with one another, our families, our neighbors, our friends, and to do the things that bring us together and create our community in these public spaces. So we have been really excited to make some transformative investments so far in our administration, in part due to the opportunity we have with the American Rescue Plan Act funds, but also complemented by the work that the city does through our community development work, the other grants that the city departments have gotten, including the planning department, all over the city to transform our park system. And a really important part of that, as everything we try to do here with this administration, is to get input directly from you, our residents, our constituents, the users of these parks, the people for whom we are looking to build special places that you all can enjoy and recreate. So we are excited to be going through this planning process generally, and are excited to kick off the public input portion of it this evening. So welcome.
This evening, the presentation will be both in English and interpreted in Spanish. We will be providing instructions that you can see on the screen, and we'll be starting the presentation in one moment.
Para la interpretación tenemos disponible esta reunión. Seleccione la opción del idioma de preferencia en la parte inferior, haciendo clic o oprimiendo el símbolo del globo y el idioma en el que desea escuchar aparecerá. Para las personas que usen sus teléfonos móviles, por favor seleccione el icono de los elipses y luego seleccione interpretación en lengua o lenguaje interpretación. Para escuchar únicamente el idioma interpretado, haga clic en Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original.
All right, next slide. So good evening. My name is Jonathan Charwick. I'm an associate principal with Activitas. I will be joined this evening with Olivia Messenger from Activitas, also a landscape designer, and Austin Hochstetler from a principal at Zek-ite Insights. The both of them will be giving a majority of the presentation this evening. We are also joined by Lauren Drago, Etta Maciek, and Valerie Vong, all from the city of Lynn, that have been working extremely hard with us on this project to date. A brief overview of the agenda for this evening. First, we will start with an overview of what an OSRP, or an open space and recreation plan, is. We will review the process to date, what has occurred prior to this evening, and what will occur throughout the duration of the project. We will also do some live polling and some Q&A with some discussion at the end of the meeting, and then we will discuss next steps following tonight's public forum. With that, I'll turn this over to Olivia Messenger to walk through the overview of the OSRP.
All right, good evening, everyone. We're here today to introduce you all to the next update of Lynn's Open Space and Recreation Plan, also known as OSRP, and just provide some background on what that means. So an OSRP, it's a document that records community needs related to open space and recreation, and it lets the city know how it can help you in the community meet your needs, wants, and goals. And in order to do this, the OSRP provides some background, a snapshot of the history of the city, demographic makeup of the community, current physical conditions, and the opportunities and constraints that exist in Lynn today. And all of that is just to provide the background for the city to set some new goals for the next few years related to open space and recreation planning. The reason that we're doing this is that the Massachusetts DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, requires that communities have an up-to-date OSRP in order to be eligible for certain grant programs through the state. So the OSRP deals with both open spaces and recreational facilities. We're spotlighting open space here just because people are usually familiar with the term recreation and recreational facilities, but less so open space. So recreational facilities, that includes outdoor spaces like parks and ball fields, playgrounds. It also includes indoor spaces like community centers, public gyms and pools. Open space, though, refers to any undeveloped land that is preserved based on natural, historic, or recreational value. So the difference is that open space is always outdoor space, and that while it may include parks and playgrounds and ball fields, it may also include conservation areas such as Lynn Woods. It also refers to any undeveloped urban areas, and that includes things like corridor parks, the waterfront, traffic medians, any space that isn't currently used for development, that could potentially be used for recreation or passive recreation, other things. Go to the next slide. So we've been referring to this project tonight as a 7-year update. Lynn already has an OSRP. It was published in 2016. It needs to be updated every 7 years in order to maintain that eligibility for funding through the state. So although a lot of the report is mostly that background information that provides a snapshot of the community, most of that only requires minor revisions, but it's important that the city creates new goals and new action items to focus on for the next 7 years with each update. And these new goals are going to represent the current and present community needs and priorities. So goals are intended to be broad and categorical, and they lay out a vision for the future. They're intended to guide recreation and open space planning and projects for the next 7 years. There are also action items, which are more step-by-step. They describe specific actions towards achieving that broader vision as outlined in the goals. And that includes identifying potential funding sources for achieving those actions. We reflect also on 2016 and what has been achieved since 2016 in a list of accomplishments. And that also helps us to determine which goals were effective and which may need further attention in this update. The OSRP is also a reference document, so it includes an inventory of open spaces, parks, recreational facilities. It includes both public and private open spaces, and that can be used to identify opportunities For renovation or expansion, it also includes conditions, assessments for the open spaces that it includes. Community needs, by creating this list, we help to establish priorities for the community, and doing things like this public forum, the survey, these other community engagement sessions will help us to identify these needs. And the public feedback will also help us to identify opportunities to offer additional resources and additional programs that may currently be lacking. And lastly, there is an updated ADA assessment of public recreational facilities. And this is based on the design standards of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it identifies where the city can improve its existing facilities to bring them up to compliance with those standards. So the 2016 OSRP goals created these 9 goals. They are to improve security and maintenance at all sites, to improve and update existing recreational facilities, to improve overall appearance and visual character of the city, to determine potential locations for new neighborhood and community-wide recreation sites, to continue to provide access to existing sites for elderly and disabled users, to develop pedestrian-oriented circulation between open space and recreation areas, to increase opportunities for water-based recreation, to increase awareness and recreational use of historic sites and districts, and to manage and improve opportunities for forest-based recreation. So as part of the 2023 OSRP update, we'll be revisiting some of these goals in the context of what's been done over the past 7 years, in the context of Lynn's current needs, in the context of all of your priorities, and reflecting where there's been progress made and where some may still need to be addressed. And ultimately, the final product of the 2023 OSRP update will be to replace these goals or to augment them, update them in order to reflect your needs and your priorities now. So with that, I'd like to just, if anyone has any questions related to the OSRP in general, I'd like to offer this opportunity to address some of that now. Otherwise, we'll move on to discuss the project timeline and the process to date.
Good.
So I have a question about goal 5, providing access to existing sites for elderly and disabled users. Why just provide access? Can we expand on that for the next 7 years to provide inclusive elements and equitable play spaces? Because providing access is different from creating spaces that people with all disabilities can use.
Yeah, that is excellent feedback for our next 7 years. So we'll be sure to think about things like that when that's the kind of thing that we're thinking about when it comes to updating these goals.
Thank you.
Okay, so jumping into the project timeline. So we've been working on this update process since the beginning of the summer. We started by reviewing the 2016 OSRP and other ongoing studies that the city has been conducting since that time and still is, including ongoing parks assessments and meeting with the project team. We're currently working on updating that inventory of parks and open spaces. We've also released the first iteration of our community survey. We have a second iteration scheduled to be released in connection with the Lynn Side Out event in September. And as part of that September Lynn Side Out event, we'll be presenting some of the initial survey results, and we'll be doing some activities with participants there to gather some additional feedback. We're going to take that feedback that we received from here, from some board and committee meetings that we're about to conduct in the coming months, from the Lynn Side Out event and from the survey. And that will help us to develop these new goals for the 2023 OSRP. Then later on, we'll have a second public forum to present those goals and get some feedback, things that we may have missed, people that we may not have been able to speak to tonight or during any of those other opportunities. And then the project team will take all of that information and will collect it all into a report, which will be published at the end of the year. We'll also present that report to other city boards and committees. We'll get some additional feedback, make some revisions based on that, and get their letters of support, which when we take that final report with all of those letters of support, all of the incorporated feedback, we'll be able to finally submit that to the Massachusetts DCR for approval. And then once that gets approved, the city of Lynn will be eligible for 7 years to receive that state funding for conservation and for recreation projects. As part of the updated action plan, the OSRP will also include some of these ongoing projects and studies. We just wanted to take this opportunity to bring some of that to your attention. I know Mayor Nicholson mentioned the American Rescue Plan Act grant funding. So here on the screen are some projects that are ongoing through 2024 as part of that. You can find out more about these on the Lynn and Common website and submit feedback related to that process. On the next slide, we're also, there's also an ongoing parks conditions assessment. And this is a study reviewing the existing condition at 19 of your city parks. And the results of this project are things that will inform our inventory. They'll also generate some priority capital projects that can be included then in the updated action plan. But just as a general note, for these parks conditions assessment projects and the ARPA projects, these are mostly renovations to existing facilities. The OSRP differs in that it is an opportunity for you to provide some big picture feedback and transformative ideas for the state of recreation in Lynn. But that said, these are also projects that benefit from public feedback, and the Lynn and Common website is a great place to provide that and to learn more about this process. So for this project, if you have feedback that you wish to provide, we have an online survey. It's currently live. It's available in 3 languages. We have English, Khmer, and Spanish. And that survey it's going to cover your household's use of open spaces and recreational programs, and your household needs and desires related to open space and recreation facilities, amenities, programs, and services. And it's also going to be an opportunity to share in an open setting your vision about the future state of open space and recreation in the city of Lynn. So there are codes to that's on the screen right now. They're also online on the Lynn and Common website, and they're on the Eventbrite where you RSVP'd for this forum, and we'll have them on the screen at the end of the presentation as well.
So I think before we move on to the live polling, we'll take a quick moment. I do want to let people know that if you do want to chat on the side, you can chat with the meeting group chat. If there's any questions during the presentation, you feel more comfortable providing feedback through there, I'll be managing the chat. And then once we start the live polling, we'll be moving it over to Austin giving the presentation.
Could we answer the one question I'm seeing in the chat from the slides for public forum number 1?
Yes, and I believe I answered that in the chat. So tonight is public forum number 1 that was shown in the project timeline. So receiving public community input from the public forum number 1, that's this evening. And we will also be meeting with boards and committees moving forward in the future. We have to set up that schedule to get feedback from the city in that fashion.
I see another question. How long is the first segment of the survey out for? We are planning to keep that up for the entire month of August, so it'll close at the end of the month.
All right, seeing no other comments, Austin, I think we can turn it over to you for the live polling, and I will put a link into the live chat as well for the polling.
Thank you, Jonathan. And actually, I've been copying things a little bit here, so let me, I can get it for you. So I'm gonna put it in Spanish. Next. Okay, so you have a couple options here for live polling during this presentation. On the screen, you will have a QR code, both in English and in Spanish. And you also have the option of clicking on a link in the chat pod to a corresponding live poll, one in English, one in Spanish. You can also go to www.menti.com and enter the code that you see on the screen, whether you're on your phone, tablet, computer. By all means, get out your technology. Used to be, we did meetings and we always said, put away your technology, but now we're asking you to utilize it during the meeting. And this is a way that we're going to have a little bit of interactivity during this meeting. One note, the English version of the polling, which I'll start here in a little bit, will be moving as I move the slide, as I advance the slide. The Spanish version will be self-directed, so it'll be self-paced. And so, okay, and then we see here in the chat pod, can I get the link emailed to me? There we go. Thank you, Lauren, very much for that. And so I'm taking my time here because I want to get everybody organized and where they need to go. So I'm going to put it up here on the screen. And so you should be seeing the screen now. And you should see the instruction page. So I'm going to wait just a little bit here so that way everybody can get into the meeting. And actually, I'm going to just verify this real fast. There we go. Present. Yes. I wanted the full screen mode. There we go. All right. So polling, real-time feedback. And again, this is the English version that you're seeing on the screen in front of you, and will show the results in live real-time action. And then if you are using the Spanish version, that is, again, self-paced, but you can do it alongside us as we advance through this English version of the poll. First question, multiple choice. How often do you use any Lynn park or open space? And the question is either daily, weekly, monthly, a few times each year, once a year, or never. Maybe you don't use Lynn parks and open space. And the question for this is also helping us understand who is in the room tonight with us here in this meeting. Let's see. Most people responding heavy users, daily, a lot of weekly use, a few monthly, and nobody really below monthly use at this moment. I'll wait about another 5 seconds. Thank you. Next question. This is multiple choice and you can select all that apply. The question is, what types of recreation activities do you or family participate in most often? So think about yourself, think about members of your household, think about your family and friends. And again, these are not every activity that we can do, but we are limited by the formatting of polling. And so you will see the answer choice of other down there on the bottom. But we have aquatics and water activities or sports, biking, fitness and wellness, general park use, and that could be taking your dog to the park. You could be doing general walking activities, shade, picnic shelters, etc. Does open space also cover the dog park on parkland? In this particular question, let's say no, let's say that's other. So please put other and then put dog park in the chat pod, please. So outdoor recreation activities, playgrounds, walking and hiking, and other. And if you have selected other as an answer choice and you have other activities in mind, please utilize the chat pod to type in those other activities that you like to participate in the most often. See a lot of walking and hikers, a lot of general park use.
May I ask a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
For the first question, it said other. Is there an edit box where you want us to detail what is that other, or do we just go to next?
You can just go to the chat pod in the actual meeting and detail what the other is.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I see my other is the dog park. Can't change my answer though. Yeah, no worries at all. So we see a lot of walking and hiking, general park use, playgrounds, aquatic activities, fitness and wellness, and a couple others. Perfect. We'll wait about another 5 seconds. Groceries, appointment. Yep, absolutely. Other general activities is mentioned in the chat pod, such as everyday life activities, groceries, appointments, etc. Thank you. We'll go to the next question. Oh, a few more responses right there at the end. Thank you very much. Now, this is specific to sports, and not everybody participates in sports, and that's okay. So if you don't, feel free not to answer this question. But in thinking about sports and athletics, what types of activities do you or family or friends participate in most often? Baseball, basketball, cricket, football, golf, pickleball, soccer, softball, swimming, tennis, volleyball, and again, there's an other choice. And if you select other, feel free to use the chat pod in the Zoom meeting to start inserting what some of those other activities are. And again, it's not saying that we think that these are the only sport activities. It's a formatting thing. We pick a certain number of activities that can make it up here. And that's why we also make sure that we include other. So we have some basketball users in the room, swimmers, and there's some more answers, more basketball users, more swimmers, a few volleyball players, some others. And in the chat pod, we see, again, another one for the dog park on the last question. Want to reiterate that. And then other is Lynn Woods Wednesday night races, trail running and snowshoeing. Oh, other interesting activities utilized for outdoor recreation. Very good. Let's see here. So again, we have some basketball users in the room, swimmers, a little volleyball, some baseball, some diamond sports, some soccer, some other. And again, if you wouldn't mind, navigate back to the chat pod and type in some other responses for the activities. And also in the chat pod, we see running, skateboarding, scootering, manhunt, chase, etc. Other activities. We'll go about another 5 seconds and then we'll advance forward. All right, next question. This is a specific question about the city's Seaport Marina. And if you don't have an opinion, that is okay. But if you do have an opinion, this is also a select all that apply question. What community uses would you like to see at the city's Seaport Marina? We've listed out several options, including additional water transportation, boater education, commercial boat access, fishing, marine tourism and sightseeing vessels, new boater opportunities, sailing and kayak programming. And then again, you will see an other answer choice as well. So if you have things in your mind that you think would work well at the city's Seaport Marina, select other, and then also please utilize the chat pod and type those responses in so we can all have them on record. Thank you, Berta. You're putting in some other options there. Thank you very much. Let's see here. So from the group, we see a lot of additional water transportation, sailing and kayaking. Then where do we go from there? Marine tourism, sightseeing. So it's kind of that tourism angle. New boater opportunities. Okay, good. Okay, and a couple others. Yeah, thank you, Berta. I see that. And a couple other responses. So again, if you have selected other and you're willing to put in some of those other ideas, by all means, please put them in the chat pod so we can have those on record. So it looks like right now kind of a tie between sailing and kayak programming and additional water transportation options. All good options for the seaport. We'll wait another 5 seconds or so. All right, thank you very much. All right, so now we're done with the multiple choices here. So here's where hopefully your mind has been thinking about answering questions. And so now we're having short answer questions. In your mind, what is the greatest attribute about Lynn's parks and open space? This is a strengths question. What are the positives of the Lynn Parks and Open Space system? Type in your responses and they will appear on the screen. And then going back to the last question here in the chat pod, specific to the Seaport, just wanted to follow up on this. Connecting it to the Heritage Park waterfront and continuing it to the bridge that connects us to Revere in the Boston waterfront. Great idea. Thank you for that feedback. First response on the screen. They have many fun activities for children. Excellent. Lynn Woods calling out a specific location is an absolute gem. Not all residents know about the Rose Garden, vastness of trails. Absolutely. Another pro would be the variety of the different types. So woods, ponds, rivers, waterfronts. Oh, great point. The fact that we have a coast as well as a wooded area. Best of both worlds. Absolutely. There's some different environments there. Lynn Woods again. Great places to meet with family and friends. Absolutely. Other strengths, keep them coming if you have them. Updated play structures and features. Railway that leads to Boston is great. There we go. Oh, recorded it twice. Look at that. Awesome. Thank you, Berta, putting in more responses. Meant to say trailway to the bike trail. No worries, we got it. Geographic diversity of parks. That's important too, how they're spread out. So not only the diversity of the parks themselves, but also the geographic, dispersion of parks. Absolutely. We'll wait about another 5 seconds here and we'll keep going. You're seeing how this is working here with the pace. Two, one. Thank you very much. Now, in the same thoughts, we're going to ask a little bit of the opposite question now. Is there anything you wish could be better about Lynn's Parks and Open Space? So we just talked about strengths and positive, the things that we like about the system. Are there now things that maybe could be improved or things that we think could be better about Lynn's Parks and Open Space? Again, open-ended response. Feel free to start typing those in and they'll appear on the screen. We got some cursive coming across the screen. Excellent. Looks like better access to beaches for wheelchair users. Absolutely. Better waterfront access and beach access for wheelchair users. Great comment. Black's Pond Playground needs improvements. Pond bank, bathhouse replacement. Good. So a specific location about capital improvements and infrastructure improvements. Year-round open bathrooms, public transportation access, water filling stations, nature-appropriate colored lighting, more accessibility, paths to different parts for playgrounds, for wheelchairs, ramps onto stages. Absolutely, just definite improved accessibility. Park maintenance, including planting of flowers, trash collection, cleanliness, overall cleanliness in the parks. Big belly barrels need weekend detention. Again, that goes kind of the staffing and in operations. Public pool, especially when the beach is closed, due to bacteria in the water play structures, cameras and corners of parks, added safety, adding a new feature, maybe a small soccer field or garden. And again, park to be more inclusive for people who have disabilities. Absolutely. Great comments. Signage and wayfinding, very important. Perfect. We'll go about another 5 seconds. And this next question, just as a preempt here, so to think about it, is going to be talking about opportunities. So start moving your mind towards opportunities. We'll go another couple seconds. Perfect. So what transformational ideas do you have to improve Lynn's Parks and Open Space opportunities over the next 7 years? So we just talked about strengths. We just talked about some weaknesses or challenges. But now think a little outside the box. This is a 7-year plan. What are those big ideas those opportunities that can really move the needle on Lynn's parks and open space over the next 7 years? What are those opportunities? You all probably didn't think you were going to be working here today in this meeting. We're putting you all to work here. More community gardens. In the chat pod, we have more information about the flora and fauna possible on site. Name of trees, benefits, so more signage, more informational, more education. Community events within the parks will increase the pride within them. So social gathering, but also bringing people to park sites to both for an awareness of park sites, but also to celebrate with events. I'll scroll back up here so I can see this. To think of all the city as a green space, great concept. That's a very big opportunity and idea about how that all connects. Community field trip to Adventures for Angels. It's a wheelchair playground park in Peabody to see how a truly inclusive and equitable play structure serves the community. Great idea, great example. Having places for food trucks to park so there could be access to food. Absolutely. A new and trending way of how park sites and public spaces are being used. Let's see here. As disabilities evolve, so will meeting eligibility requirements for ADA, including those with mental health and neurodivergent, making signs in Braille or accessible formats, describing parks on a website. Absolutely. And that is such a great and critical point when we talk about accessibility and we talk about inclusion. What does really universal mean? Rejuvenation of outdoor spaces, major refurbishment. Absolutely. Let's see, yeah, taking stock and looking at unused spaces in Lynn and how do we transform them? How do we revitalize them? More signage, again, talking about that accessibility. Let's see here. Website could be detailed in providing folks with visual impairments how to navigate the park. That's absolutely a great idea, especially along those lines. Space for community art, so public art and spaces. Programming that's inclusive, including our youngest members and youth with food and music. Another idea, shade at playgrounds, beach and open space. Absolutely. Thank you very much for all this. We'll wait another 5 seconds here and we'll go to the next question. Absolutely. Leverage the OSRP to mitigate harm from development and traffic pollution. Absolutely. Land resiliency is a big trend and a big theme in our industry. Okay. I think the last open-ended long question, I promise that I'm making you really think here. So what are the greatest threats to the parks and open space over the next 7 years? And if you're paying attention, we're kind of doing a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Threats meaning we may not have complete control over these things, but over the next 7 years, these types of things are going to affect and influence the way that we deliver parks and open space. And I don't want to put words into your mouth, but think of economics, think of, weather patterns. That's what I'm talking about here is what are some of those big things that we need to account for whenever we do a 7-year or long range plan? What are some of those things that we just need to be mindful of as planners that, hey, this might affect us over the next 7 years as we try to implement this plan and as we try to plan for open space in Lynn. Perfect. Gentrification, exactly. So these type of thoughts and these type of ideas. And we do this because we work in a lot of different communities in a lot of different states as well. And what happens somewhere doesn't necessarily happen somewhere else in terms of what communities are dealing with or may deal with. And so that's why we ask this type of question. So again, climate change coming up there on the screen, gentrification, overdevelopment, absolutely. So that has implications for land acquisition and how we plan our spaces. So a big consideration, operations and maintenance. So looking at the trash in the parks, lack of upkeeping of parks and playgrounds, safety around the parks, and then the almighty funding topic, which is fun for everybody there, but making sure that we have enough financial resources. Underrepresentation of disabled community in Lynn. Critical voices. Lack of finances, the ADA requirements, increasing traffic for construction. Yeah, absolutely. And that goes hand in hand with overdevelopment. I mean, or just development. We're going to have different traffic patterns and pedestrian patterns because of that. Parks made accessible may only be done in smaller or least desired parks, notorious for danger, gang activities, etc. It's a great point about those decision points of what and where we make improvements to what spaces. Absolutely. Continued misuse, parking over asphalt berm. Okay, I see. And so basically how spaces are being used, whether that's ingress, egress, circulation, parking, physical activities. Public spaces need to be durable to today's generation. I think that's a very good phrase, durable to today's generation. Flooding of wheelchair ramps, great point. You can make things accessible, but you also have to make sure that they're not just, we're talking about, in this particular instance, physical accessibility, but we also need to make sure that they're accessible not only just in the beautiful sunshine, but while, year round, that things are accessible. We'll go about another 5 seconds here. Lack of care, continued investment, limiting or banning traffic in or around green spaces. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, misuse again. All right, thank you. So I want to be mindful of our time, and so I'll keep us going here. All right, here's a question that there's 9 things up here on the screen. And it basically says, what actions do you think are most important to emphasize over the next 7 years? Now, there's many actions that can be taken. And honestly, these are representative of the goals that Olivia talked about earlier in this presentation. And basically what we're asking you to do is, of these 9 things, how would you prioritize them? So on your screen, you can actually select first, and then select one of the goals. Then you select second, and then you select one of the 8 remaining goals. And then you select third, and then you select, one of the 7 remaining goals, and you prioritize. And as you all kind of move them and manipulate them on the screen, it will change. It'll change on the screen. Oh, there we go. Look at all those colors. I was waiting for that. Okay.
I'm not sure if it's showing the results, but if it's a visual thing, could you potentially describe that, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So coming in right now, accessibility improvements are up there up towards the top, and then it goes to upgrading existing recreation facilities. Then improving the city's appearance and character. More water-based recreation, trails and pathways connectivity, land acquisition. Oh, a little bit of a change here. As more and more people vote, we get a little bit more and more granularity with the answers here. So it looks like the kind of the top tier, if I will say that, in terms of gold priorities are accessibility, improving the city's appearance and character, and upgrading existing recreation facilities. And then there's a kind of a second or mid-tier chunk that is security and maintenance, trails and pathways connectivity, improving historic sites and district awareness and use, and land acquisition. And then kind of towards the bottom is specifically more water-based recreation and more forest-based recreation. Yeah, still stays that kind of the same here. Perfect. We'll go about another 5 seconds, and then I think I have one more question, and then I'll stop talking, I promise. All right, so you've been with me through all this. So I'm gonna culminate this with this question. If you could describe your biggest priority for Lynn's open space and recreation plan in one word, what would it be? And technically, you have 3 opportunities to do this because you can insert up to 3 words or short phrases. Like you can use like 1 or 2 words, but try to limit it to 1 word if you can. But you have 3 opportunities to insert 1 word. So this is where, if you think about the next 7 years, I'm gonna put it out there, like accessibility, where you put maintenance, improvements. Again, you don't have to use these words. I'm just telling you that's the idea of what this is. So what is that one big, this is what I want over the next 7 years. This would be my biggest priority. What would that be? So we have accessibility up here on the screen already. We have inclusivity, maintain, rehab, equitable, accessibility, absolutely getting a little bit bigger. This is a word cloud, and so I'm describing it. And I see upgrade coming on the screen. Thank you, Mary. Upgrade, yes. So not only just maintaining, but upgrading our system. So we see accessibility, inclusivity, equity, maintenance. We see preservation, community pride, invest, improve, clean. Good job, everybody. Pedestrian based, that goes back to the idea about how do you really connect your city? More maintenance, getting bigger, locally governed, refurbish. Great. We'll go about another 5 seconds. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, very much. All right. We have reached the end of that, so I appreciate that very much. And so the idea is, for those that were taking the Spanish version, we will merge those responses together. And this is a very good way to help us collect information, but also hopefully, I know that took a little bit, was fun, was interactive and was a different way of providing some input. I promise we'll get to a Q&A session here to where it's a little bit different. But thank you very much for participating in that. And hopefully that got your all's minds going about providing input here in this meeting. So I will stop talking there and I will pass it back over.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for the great input. This is extremely helpful, and what's important is the city's feedback will help us prepare this OSRP in a way that meets the needs of the community. If you could go to the next slide. So we would like the last portion of this meeting, we'd like to open it up to a discussion, a few general discussion points that we could discuss, or what are your goals for the next 7 years? So something that maybe wasn't in the presentation already. What would you like to see accomplished? And what do you want to see the planning team incorporate into this planning process? And what may be some unmet open space needs that exist in the city of Lynn, or any other questions as it relates to the process we're going through, what an OSRP is. So I'll open up to anyone that would like to ask any questions in discussion. We'll try to answer to the best of our ability.
Hello, hi. My name is Louise Dominic.
Hi.
I'm a mother of child with disability. And not really a question, but I want you guys, when you think about ADA, so we need to go beyond ADA. Because sometimes when you're thinking about ADA, let's example the wheelchair, because the wheelchair, when you can have like small, medium, and large. So some places, because they go by ADA, they put like the place for the wheelchair, only the small wheelchair can go through. If you have a large person, sorry, my son is bothering me. If you have a large wheelchair, so that large wheelchair can go through that place. So I just want everybody to think beyond the ADA. And my wish for Lynn in the 7 years, for Lynn to become a city where everyone's belong and where everyone is included. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All great questions, and we'll certainly look into those as we work through the process.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I also have a disabled child. My son is 3.5 and he is in a wheelchair. Currently there are no Lynn parks that he can play in. And to Luis's point about going beyond the ADA does have certain standards, but in real life, I think the public needs to know, like the ADA considers wood chips an accessible covering. However, currently in many of the Lynn parks, we have about 7 to 8 inches deep of wood chips in some areas. I believe the ADA requirement is for it to be 3 inches or less, but even if it's 3 inches or less, navigating through that in a wheelchair, or if you're one of the many adults or younger persons that use a walker to ambulate, it's not a safe service at all. I think it would serve the Parks Department very well if there could be a separate meeting with families and with disabled individuals, because I think a lot of meeting up to ADA requirements, as Louise said, ADA requirements are the bare minimum, and actually all ADA says is that someone can access the park and not actually use or perform any type of integrative or equitable play with the structures. I think a lot of times parks get labeled as inclusive, but when you're a member of a family who seeks out inclusive spaces, when you show up at those inclusive places, they are not wheelchair accessible. They are only geared towards play and enjoyment for those without disabilities. So I think that's something that for the next 7 years and all the years to come, really need to be paid attention to. Disabled people have a right to play in public spaces.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, the requirements for ADA, along with playground requirements, is always a struggle in all the communities I know we work with, especially in Massachusetts. I will note, so we discussed earlier in the meeting, part of the ARPA projects, there's a number of projects that are being done, improvement projects. I do believe a number of them do have some playground work in those. I don't know what the projects are, but hopefully some of those are taken into consideration, some of your concerns. But absolutely documented and all very good points.
And just for a specific example, the equipment that designed for Kylie Park has been labeled as inclusive, but it's not, it's only accessible.
Gotcha.
Offline, I can provide a list of playgrounds in the surrounding communities that are actually designed for those with visual disabilities, hearing disabilities, and all inclusive in one space.
Yep.
Unfortunately, those places exist because a child in the community died and grieving parents took it upon themselves to do what the cities could not do. So I would love to see a truly inclusive park and even, disabled parking at Lynn Woods where there is none right now. I would love to see that and have it happen because the city wants it to be there and not because a grieving parent is putting it in place because their child never had a chance to play.
Certainly. Lauren, where do you think the best place would be for her to provide that information to the city?
Lisa, if you're willing, I would love to just follow up with you specifically over email directly. I can chat you my email address if you're up for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I know there's other parents too who would love to participate. A lot of times the parents of disabled kids in Lynn, literally there's nothing designed for them here, so they tend to not participate in these things. So if we could find time to rally some parents up who would like to offer, to feel like they will be heard, I would give you all that information and more.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll take a moment. Let me look through the chat, a few questions that have come in. So what are some of the successes based upon last plan 2016? We're currently looking through that. So as part of this update, we look at the previous goals, how those were met, and what we need to either continue those same goals or develop new ones. So we're in the process of doing that. And I think to address that, there'll be another public forum in the next few months to follow up on this meeting. So at that point, we'll be able to sort of talk about some of those successes and how they're going to be built on for this update. Aside from the event in September, what steps are being taken to connect with a more representative sample of the Lynn population? So we do have the Lynn side out that we'll be attending in September. We have the survey that's currently open. We believe the survey will close at the end of this month, but we will also be reopening the survey at a later date to get more public feedback. And I believe at this point, we have 300 or so individuals that have filled out that survey. So we certainly encourage people to continue to fill that out. And these public forums are a really good opportunity to provide additional feedback. And we'll discuss how we can do that following this meeting.
I'm happy to jump in with Paul's question asking about some of the successes based upon the last plan in 2016.
Sure.
Here, I guess I can add the spotlight of myself. Paul, thank you for the question. I think some of the biggest successes reviewing that plan is that we've added park space to the city. I don't think a lot of cities can say that between their open space and recreation plan updates. We've had the Frederick Douglass Park, which is the location of the Lynn Side Out. It's been a great asset for the downtown for many different events. We also have great work happening for the Harbor Park and the access to the waterfront throughout that whole neighborhood with the space from the breakwater, with the Harbor Park that's going on the former landfill. So I think those are some pretty big successes, even if not all of them are completed yet. At the same time, going through the Vision Lynn process recently, I definitely heard that people are still feeling the challenge around maintenance, around cleanup for our beaches and the environmental issues there. So with those successes and those big ticket wins, we also still have our work cut out for us on some of the other goals as well. And if anyone else wants to jump in on that with anything I'm forgetting on our side, I'm happy to have you add on to it. Seeing none, it looks like Karen has raised her hand. Karen, feel free to unmute yourself and weigh in with your comment or question.
Thank you. Hi, I didn't want to interrupt. Sorry. So my name is Karen Pierre Lewis and I live in Ward 6. And one of the, I would say, it seems like a big ask, but I was really thinking about how large Lynn is, but unfortunately they don't have a public pool. And I think especially with like the hot summer we have had, and thinking of how the beach closes at times due to bacteria in the water and all of that, it would be really great for the community, especially because for some the beach is not at accessible distance. So that is, I would say, like one of perhaps a big ask that hopefully could be considered. But also in a lot of the parks that do exist, I think a few of the structures are not made for older kids. So one of the thoughts is like Bennett Park has an unused like grassy area that could be used for either a community garden or perhaps a play structure that's for the older kids. One of the things that my 10-year-old daughter was saying also is making it perhaps more interactive. I've seen some have like bugs or musical instruments within the play structure. So just having more interactive space in the play structures, and just lastly adding plants and flowers around the parks would really make it be more welcoming. And my husband, one thing he mentioned was having at least maybe like a security camera in the corner of parks would make people feel safer, as we know, at times there's, especially in the areas that are a little bit less used, we see some activity that could be worrisome. So that would be just another suggestion. And I think that's all. And I'll also paste this long list in the chat. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Karen, when you say older kids, are you thinking like 5 through 12?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments from any attendees?
I'm seeing a hand raised from Danny.
Yep.
Danny, if
Yep,
you're able
that's me.
Perfect, go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and just moving in towards the future in 7 years from now, I believe that our park should also be accessible to adults as well. I'm 32 years old, and as a blind person, I am completely blind. Um, I often have to take transportation there because well, yeah, our sidewalks. But once I'm there, it's hard for drivers to know where to drop me off. There's not really a designated like drop off pickup area for people that have disabilities. Usually, or ideally, it would be nice if there was a drop off pickup area where there was some form of accessible kind of paths that I could take into the park. Up to this day, I haven't been able to visit a park without a sighted guide. For the number one reason is because it's not very accessible. There's not a lot of paths that I can take, and often they lead you into the middle of nowhere, and then you just kind of get lost. I am a professional interpreter, and when I do find myself at parks where I have to do an interpretation for events, for nonprofits, and so forth, um, a lot of the stages are not accessible. They don't have ramps. The stairs are very outdated. They're not even like I would say like leveled stairs, or like one step is higher than the other, then there's like a broken stair there, whatever, things along those lines. And I just think we need there's a lot of work to do. So I guess in 7 years from now, not I guess, but I would love to see, and I mean that with vision, not so much with physical sight. I would love to envision a Lynn that is the highlight and the what is it, the lamp on the hill, if you will, of an exemplary community that really puts inclusion at its truest meaning by promoting accessibility, inclusion, and so forth in all of our parks, and not just for youth. I think also for adults, and I believe also for our seniors that do still visit these parks and are able to get out there. I think an accessible park promotes health and a healthy lifestyle, and I think a healthy community promotes a happier community, a more joyful community, and a more tightly woven, bonded community that just gets along better. But I think it starts with being able to access those places that that are disabling me. And I often do say this: it is not my disability that disables me, but the things that are not made accessible to me. I should not be disabled by broken paths or inequitable parks. These are places where I should be able to go and also carry out a healthy lifestyle, but I often find myself broken down or just deferring from attending or going to a lot of these parks because of that lack of accessibility. So 7 years from now, I would love, if at this point I do have kids, I would love my kids to be able to visit that, and me being able to spend time with my kids without having to worry that my accessibility is a thing holding me back from spending time with my children at a park like that. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. That's great feedback. We'll definitely take note of all that and see if we can incorporate that into these improvements. Anyone else?
Oh, can I say something? Can
Certainly.
you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. This is not exactly a Lynn problem, but we have this wonderful pedestrian bridge that crosses over the Linway. You can't get a wheelchair onto it in the wintertime. There's a stretch of a few feet. It's all grass and it never gets shoveled. And I don't know if that's the community college or the state or Lynn or who owns that particular 10 square feet of grass, but it just chimes in with what this other person was saying. Inclusive and accessible, maybe two different things.
Great. Yeah, we'll certainly look into that. Thank you. Any other comments or discussion from the community?
I'm seeing a comment in Spanish in the chat about feeling unsafe because of intoxicated people and conflicts in the park and needing police and not necessarily getting it. So I'll just highlight that for those listening in.
Great. All right, seeing no other comments, Austin, if you could go on to the next slide. So we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So as we noted this evening, this is public forum number 1. So this is our first opportunity to receive feedback from the community. It certainly will not be the last. We will be scheduling a board committee meeting with some of the city boards that will be to be scheduled. We don't know what that date is, I believe yet. And near the end of the summer, in the next week or so, unfortunately, the summer is ending really too quick. We'll be closing the survey, but we do anticipate opening up the survey at a later date this fall once we get some feedback and look to get some additional feedback. And we will be attending Lynn Side Out on September 9th. So that will be a good opportunity to come see us at a booth, talk a little bit about what we discussed this evening, along with other information that we could gain from everyone thinking about this project a little bit. And again, we thank the community for any feedback. All feedback is great feedback in order for us to develop an updated plan that will suit the needs of the community as a whole over the next 7 years. So if you want to go to the last slide. So again, these are the QR codes for the survey. If you haven't taken it already, I certainly encourage you to. If you want to learn more and submit further questions, please follow the website below. And Lauren, unless we have anything else.
Yeah, I'll just echo. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. I really appreciate everybody's feedback. Maybe a parting question on your way out, if you want to drop in the chat how you heard about this event. It's helpful for us to know what promotions are effective, and I'd love to hear what brought everybody here tonight. Otherwise, have a great night. Thank you again for participating. We really appreciate the feedback.